Hello everybody and welcome back to the Sociology series of videos. This is going to be the final video of Chapter 2 in our video series. So far we've talked about Section 1, which is the meaning of culture. We have also dealt with Section 2, which is called the cultural variation. And what we're going to do to wrap up this particular chapter is talk about some of the current controversies related to the concept of culture in the United States and in other countries as well. So first off, obviously we have a lot of issues in the United States that we wrestle with, and a lot of them do have a connection to culture. So here are just some of the few that our society has to deal with regard to culture. First question that comes up every now and then is, what is the responsibility of a subculture to conform to the dominant culture? Back in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, we had our largest wave of immigrants that came to the United States. It was generally understood by many of those immigrants that they had a responsibility to conform to the dominant American culture. And that is, should they learn to speak the English language? Many immigrants changed their names to American names, and there was generally an understanding that if you are now an American, you need to act like American, you need to speak like an American, and basically conform to the dominant culture. Nowadays, we've seen more and more people coming from other countries and also some subcultures within the United States which really don't want to conform to the dominant culture. And then it becomes a question of, what does our society do, or at least make them do by law or at least sanctions, to conform to the dominant culture. And there's many examples of that, but that is something that our society continues to wrestle with, because in the United States we have a lot of freedoms protected by our Constitution. There is no such law that says you must speak English. However, there's been some talk around the country as to how far we should go to force people in our country to conform to the dominant culture. The next question that comes up every now and then is, do all cultures deserve equal respect? Now, one of the concepts we brought up in Chapter 2 was the concept of cultural relativism, where you try not to make any judgments on other cultures when you are studying them. Some people will go as far as to say that every culture deserves equal respect, and any type of criticism that is directed towards anyone's culture is seen as insensitive, intolerant, and not very politically correct. There are valid arguments on both sides, and some critics would say it is not reasonable to expect that every culture should be given or even deserve equal respect. Respect in and of itself is a concept that is very subjective. If you were to ask somebody, name the people you have the most respect for, you're pretty much not going to get the answer, well, everybody gets the same amount of respect from me. On the one hand, you might say, well, every human being deserves some level of respect simply because they are a human being. But beyond that, many times we vary the amount of respect that we give various people, because in our minds we generally believe that people should earn their respect. And how much respect you give someone if they're not a very nice person? Well, kind of cultures sort of work the same way, which is why some people do not like the fact that some sociologists will say all cultures deserve equal respect. Some people criticize that by saying that simply is just not possible. I mentioned this before, but the whole concept of bilingual education, or making English or any language the official language of a country, is brought up every now and then, not only in our country but in other countries as well. And the concept of bilingual education comes up particularly among states that border Mexico and have to deal with a lot of the immigrants coming from that part of the world. And should the schools in that area teach in Spanish or in English or any other language that comes up? And that is something that some of those states in our whole country wrestles with, dealing with culture. Certainly when it deals with immigration, you certainly have the struggle when it comes to illegal immigration. And should we limit the amount of people that are coming from other cultures? What impact does that have if a very large number of people come to the United States illegally, particularly if they are not all that interested in assimilating into the American culture. Both sides of the political spectrum debate that over and over, and both sides make some valid arguments, but it is certainly something that we struggle with as a society. Certainly with the changing demographics in the United States, that has become an issue as well. There have been many statistics that's come out saying that in a particular amount of years, say 50 to 100 years, that Caucasians in the United States will actually be the minority. Now that has a lot to do with who is immigrating to America from what parts of the world. It has to do with birth rates, and whites in America tend to have a lower birth rate than some of the other minority groups, and over time that can change the balance of population in our country. You have certain debate as to what that will mean to the American culture. Is that going to be a whittling away of our traditional Western style American culture, or is that something that's going to strengthen the United States? So bouncing those questions around certainly are a hot topic in America today, and many people are very passionate on both sides of that debate. And the point is not to say that one side is wrong or right. The point is to say that a lot of the current controversies that we face in American society today do have a basis of culture, do have a part to play with regard to culture and the discussion of that and all the problems within that topic.